the basic, when you talk about the basic statistical techniques, it has different parts and portions. For example, we have to know that what is the type of the data, what is the measurement scale, and then comes to the descriptive statistics. Under the descriptive statistics, mainly two broad category. One is central tendency or measures of central tendency, and second is measures of dispersion. And obviously, third is the inferential statistics, which includes the testing of hypothesis. So this is the basics of basic statistical technique. But before we proceed, we must know that what is statistics and what for we are doing or we are computing the descriptive statistics. Whenever we try to analyze our data set, some statistical techniques are being used, and we need to ask the questions that why this statistical technique is used, what is the expected output we are going to get, and what are the assumptions we need to meet or our data should meet. Now, there are several definitions of the statistics, and many eminent personalities have defined statistics in different ways. According to Croxton and Corden, they said that statistics may be defined as the science of collection, presentation, analysis, and interpretation of the numerical data. So every term is a kind of keyword and it has an important meaning. Statistics is defined as the science of collection, presentation, analysis, and interpretation of the numerical data. So first of all, the most important term is the data. Once we do not, if once we get the data, then only we can do the other things. Yeah. So when we talk about the data, broadly, these are the two categories of the data. One we say it is a primary data, another is the secondary data. Most of the statistical technique or analysis are based on the secondary data. Very few are based on the primary data. But what is primary data? The data collected by the particular person or the organization or the researcher for their own use through direct personal interview or schedule and questionnaire. Particularly in the social science research, you may come across with this kind of primary data collection, that some researchers are collecting the data for their own use or for the use of an organization or researchers by means of personal interview or schedule and questionnaire. Secondary data is the collected and processed by some other agency, but the investigator uses it for his study. So in the public domain, you may find that several secondary data are available in whether it is in agriculture or in biology or medicine or engineering or any other field. You can have the secondary data available in many public domain websites. So when you talk about the data collection, it has a primary data and secondary data. In the primary data, either you go for the survey or questionnaire, you go for the personal interview, you have some observations, and then you explore those. Whereas in case of the secondary data, how do we get the secondary data? Either you go for the government database, some public website, or other private websites, some commercial websites, or literature review. Through literature review also, you can have the data collected, that is the secondary data. Now, based on the nature of the data is classified into two parts. Based on the nature of the data, or you can say the scale of measurement or measurement, we call the data as qualitative data or quantitative data. By the name itself, you can understand that qualitative data means the measurements cannot be measured on a natural numerical scale. Whereas in case of the quantitative data, their measurements are collected or recorded as a number, right? When you get the examples, you can understand it better. Qualitative data means it may be names of persons, it may be kind of smells, say aromatic or buttery, it may be colors. When we represent this kind of data set, they are basically qualitative data. But quantitative data, it does necessarily mean that it has some numbered, recorded number. It may be scores on exams, the weights of a person or a subject, the shoe size. These are the different examples of the quantitative data. Mostly we deal with the quantitative data. When we go for some statistical analysis or advancement in statistical analysis, we generally want this quantitative data. But qualitative data is also an important data set when you go for some advancement in analysis like your logistic or multinomial logistic analysis. In the further days of the training program, you will be explored with those kind of data set also. Now, based on the scale of measurement, if only the naming of the variables are there, then it is nominal. If the variables are named plus they can be ordered, then we say that this data set is ordinal. Then comes interval. It has name, it has order plus some proportionate interval. And finally, we go to the ratio scale measured, which is name plus order plus proportional interval plus it can accommodate absolute zero. So these are the basic scales of measurement starting from the nominal to ordinal to interval and the ratio. Nominal and ordinal, these two types of data comes under your qualitative measurement, and interval and ratio, these are under the quantitative measurement. By the name itself, you can understand that nominal means you cannot order them. For example, the gender in most of the social science survey, we can include few of the variables which are nominal in nature. For example, gender, male and female, you cannot order them. Then comes ordinal. If we go for the say family income or the income of the farmers, then we can categorize them in small income, medium income, and large income. So they can be ordered. That's why it is ordinal, though it also comes under the category of qualitative data analysis. And then interval and ratio, these are the scale measured data which are represented in terms of the quantitative value. So these are few examples that how the scales of measurement and corresponding examples you can just relate with. Nominal scale, say soil type, breeds of silk, like that. Ordinal scale, income of the farmers, disease severity. Interval scale, maybe temperature in rearing house or soil pH. And ratio scale, remaining, leaf yield, silk thread length, and all these things. And then there are different operations or basic statistical analysis. So basically, when we go for the ratio or scale measured data, then we can do all the analysis, almost all the analysis. But for the qualitative data, all analytical techniques are not applicable. Few analytical technique or very specified analytical techniques are applicable for the analysis of the qualitative data. Okay. For example, you cannot compute the mean of qualitative variable, but you can definitely compute the median of say ordinal scale variable, like that. Okay, this is a small summary of that what kind of statistical measures you can compute or you can apply on different scale measured data. If you have a nominal data, then only very few statistical measures you can compute, then followed by ordinal, followed by interval, and then ratio. Once we have the data, then comes the analysis. So these are the few parts of the statistics. First, you have a data, that is a numerical data. Then you go for the analysis. Now, under this, descriptive statistics, it comes first. Why do we need to compute the descriptive statistics? Because whenever our objective is fixed, for example, you have to apply some advanced statistical technique to represent your data set. But the data analysis, the first step of data analysis is that you need to visualize the data. You need to understand the data. And what does it mean? Visualization and understanding means that you compute some basic statistical measures on the data set so that it gives you a glimpse of the picture of the data and it helps you in further advanced statistical analysis. For example, mean of the data, what is the median? Median is the positional average, you know. Then mean, what is the mode of the data set? What is the kind of skewness and kurtosis? What is the scatteredness in the data? What is the pickedness of the data? What is the kind of distribution the data is holding? All these kinds of things are basically coming under the descriptive statistics, which helps you in deciding that which particular analysis you need to apply to reach to the conclusion for the specific objectives you have. Now, under these summary statistics or descriptive statistics, as we have already told that it has two basic category. One is the measures of central tendency and is the measures of dispersion. Central tendency, by the name itself, you can understand that the measures, whatever we'll be talking about, they are basically based on the central tendency. That means center of the data point. Central tendency is a single figure that represents the whole mass of the data. Your data may be ranging between a particular value to other value, but its mass will be centered to a central value, a particular value. and that is measured in terms of the different measures of central tendency. In practical situations, one need to have a single value to represent each variable in the whole set of data. For example, mean, the median, or mode. These are the measures of central tendency. If we know the mean of a particular variable or mean of a particular data set, probably we can infer something about the data. That if the say we have a data set of say a height of 20 persons, and we know the mean of the height of these 20 persons is something, then we can understand that okay, the persons heights are almost around this particular value. Their mass is almost at this particular mean. Then comes the measures of dispersion. The literal meaning is that scatteredness, how scattered the data is. Okay, these measures will describe the value in the data set are dispersed on each side of the central value. So first of all, you compute the central tendency, maybe by means of mean or median or mode, and then you find the scatteredness, how dispersed the data is. So based or with respect to the central tendency, with respect to the measure of central tendency, how the data is scattered in both the side of the central tendency. These are the different measures. To be more specific, the central tendency or average, it had either we have a mathematical average or you have a positional average. Mathematical average means either you are computing the mean. Out of that, you may compute the arithmetic mean or geometric mean or harmonic mean. These are the three basic means which we can compute from a data set. Another is the positional average. Positional average mean it the position is middle, the middlemost position. It may not be the mean, it may be median and mode. So these are called the positional average. And to compute, probably I'm not letting you know any new things. This is very obvious and everybody knows it. Only thing is that sometimes we forget to go by step analysis that what is the first step to do when a data comes in our hand. When a data comes in our hand, as I told earlier also, that we need to first visualize the data, either by a plot, though we'll be describing that too, that when a data comes in our hand, we try to visualize the data first. For example, we have two variables, x and y. Okay. So what we do, we make a scatter diagram. We make a scatter plot. So scatter plot will give us that what is the pattern existed or what is the relationship existed between these two variables. That will help us in determining that which kind of model I need to call for to represent this data set. Similarly, there are many more graphs, and whatever graph is comfortable, that particular plot needs to be created, or most appropriate plot needs to be created to represent the data set. Then we compute the summary statistics to understand the different measures. What is the mean? What is the median? What is the skewness, kurtosis, and all those things. So these formulas, you can get it in any textbook or you are already aware of this. Under this mean, we can compute arithmetic, geometric, and harmonic mean. But the most important thing is that where to use which kind of mean. We cannot use arithmetic mean everywhere. We cannot use geometric mean or harmonic mean everywhere. There is some specific case where we can go for computing this geometric mean and harmonic mean and arithmetic mean. So that we need to understand. So when we go for arithmetic mean, when the data is homogeneous in nature, when the data set is homogeneous in nature. And then comes geometric mean. Geometric mean when you are looking for some averaging the ratios or percentage of rate or rate of population growth, when these kind of figures we need to compute, then instead of arithmetic mean, we should go for the geometric mean. So that we need to remember that if a data comes in our hand and the date and we are asked that to compute what is the rate of population growth or what is the rate of growth or percentage or kind of things, then instead of going for arithmetic mean, we should go for the geometric mean. And the harmonic mean, it is basically the reciprocal of the arithmetic mean of the reciprocal of the individual observations. So these are the formulas for computing the different means. Then come median. Median, as we know that median is nothing but the positional average. The positional average. And if you remember the table which we showed in the initial slide, that what particular statistical measures can be computed in which kind of data. If you have a nominal data or ordinal data or interval or scale measure data, you have specific statistical measures can be computed. For example, in a qualitative data, mean cannot be computed, but probably median can be computed. sometimes. And when the median is defined as the value of the variable which divides the whole set of data into two equal parts. Okay, median is the value of the variable which divides the whole set into two equal parts or equal halves. So what is the way out to compute the median? Either you arrange the data set in ascending or descending order of magnitude. Okay, and if the number of observation of this particular data is odd number, then median will be just n plus 1 by 2th observation. If n is odd, that means you will get the median at n plus 1 by 2 this observation. And if the number of observation is even, then the value between n by 2 and n plus 1 by 2. This is the observation. This is the median. Generally, we take the average between these two values and we compute the median. And this is particularly for the qualitative data. For example, average intelligence, the distribution of wealth, all these things are qualitative in nature, and you can compute median where you probably cannot compute mean, or if you can compute mean, that may not be the proper representative of the data set. Then comes mode. Mode is defined as the value which occurs most frequently in a dataset. That means the particular value whose frequency is the highest. The particular value in the data whose frequency is the highest, that is considered as the mode. And the very famous example, or in any of the book, you can find that the shoe size. If you go to buy a shoe from the shoe shop, the mode of this particular shoe size will be the size of the shoe. So that is the mode. And these are the the table shows that which particular statistical measure or measures of central tendency should be used. Arithmetic mean it can be computed for any continuous data. Any continuous data. Median, skewed data, or data with outliers. So if you have a data set, which has some very extreme observations also, so in that particular case, if you compute the mean, that will be more inflated, that will be more affected. Now consider, for example, you consider the scores or the scores in a subject, okay, by 10 students. Now, most of the students are, say, scoring between, say, 70 to 80, okay, out of 100. But one student has scored maybe 95. So if you compute the average of all these 10 students, your average will not be the proper representative of this kind of data, because the particular student who has scored 95 and above, his score will not be represented properly by taking the mean. That means that particular student score is an outlier here, or extreme observations. So in that situation, instead of computing the mean, we should go for the median, because median represents the positional average. It is not affected by the extreme observations or outlier. Then come mode. Mode is for categorical or discrete data. Go for the geometric mean. Already discussed that when you are finding out the growth rate or rate of growth, or multiplicative or ratio based data you have, then you go for the geometric mean. And harmonic mean specifically for the rates or ratios. What is the speed, average speed? Okay. What is the average efficiency of all this kind of thing? We can go for the harmonic mean. Then once you know the particular mean to compute or particular measures of central tendency to be computed, you just go for computing it by using the formula. But when we go for the statistical software, even in Excel also, you can compute so many statistical measures, and analysis can be done in Excel also. But we will be using SPSS, and we'll see that how different statistical measures can be computed in SPSS in very easily. These are coming to the dispersion. So under the measures of central tendency, only three basic measures: mean, median, and mode. These are the basic measures of central tendency. And among the mean, so we have three: arithmetic mean, geometric mean, and harmonic mean. And then median and mode also we have discussed. Coming to the dispersion, once we know the central value where the whole mass of the data is concentrated, then we are trying to know that what is the kind of scatteredness present in the data set. That means once we have computed or once we have decided that this is the central value of the data set where the whole mass is concentrated towards, then with respect to that particular central value, how the other observations are situated, how the other observations are distributed, how scattered they are. To understand that, we need to compute these measures of dispersion. Out of the measures of dispersions, we have two broad categories. One is the absolute measure and another is the relative measure. If you want to compute the absolute measure, you go for the range or quartile deviation, mean deviation or standard deviation. These are the absolute measures of dispersion. Coming to the relative measure, we have coefficient of range, we have coefficient of quartile deviation, coefficient of mean deviation, and coefficient of variance. These are the relative measures. So we'll try to understand that what is the difference between absolute measure and relative measure in terms of the numerical value also. So range is basically when a data comes in our hand, you have computed the central value. Central value is by means of mean or median or mode. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to understand what is the dispersion present in that particular data set. That means with respect to the central value, we have already computed how the other observations are distributed, how scattered the other observations are with respect to the central value. So one of the measure is the range. Range is simply the minimum value and the maximum value, the difference between the maximum value and the minimum value. This is the range. That what is the kind of interval, what is the kind of interval the data is lying on. So this is called range. Then coefficient of range. So coefficient of range, this is a relative measure. By the formula also you can see coefficient of range is largest value minus the smallest value divided by largest value plus the smallest value. So this is the coefficient. And where to use this? When we go for some quality control, weather forecasting or stock market variations, we need to understand. Then we go for the range. Second measures of dispersion is interquartile range or quartile deviation. This is nothing but Q3 minus Q1 upon 2. Q3 is the third quartile. Q1 is the first quartile. You know, in a particular data set, you can have three quartile. Quartile means the value or values which can differentiate the data or divide the data into four equal halves. Okay, median is the second quartile, which divides the data set into two equal halves. Quartile 1, quartile 3. Quartile 1 is that below that we have 25% of the data and above that we have 75% of the data. Quartile 3, below that we have 75% of the data and above quartile 3 we have 25% of the data. So for computing the interquartile range or quartile deviation, we require the quartile 3 and quartile 1. And we take the difference between quartile 3 and quartile 1 and divide it by 2. That will represent the quartile deviation. Then come the coefficient of quartile deviation, which is again a relative measure of dispersion. One of the same, just like your coefficient of range. Here also it is coefficient of quartile deviation, and that is Q3 minus Q1 divided by Q3 plus Q1. Then come mean deviation. Mean deviation, it is arithmetic mean of the absolute deviation of the individual value from a measure of central tendency of the data set. So the central tendency of the data, it may be mean, it may be median, it may be mode. You know that there are three basic central tendency or measures of central tendency. Either you can compute mean or median or mode. That is represented by A in general, capital A. So mean deviation is that when you take the arithmetic mean of the absolute deviation from each and every observations from the central tendency. That is your mean deviation. That A, if it is mean, then it is mean deviation from mean. Okay, that is 0. If it is median, then it is mean deviation from median. Mode, then it is mean deviation from mode. So A will represent that if it is mean, then it will be mean deviation taken from mean. If it is median, then mean deviation taken from median. And if A represents mode, then it will be mean deviation taken from mode. Coming to the coefficient of mean deviation, which is again the relative measure of dispersion, it is simply the ratio between the mean deviation divided by average used in calculating the mean deviation. That means mean deviation divided by the measure of central tendency where from the deviation is computed. Okay. Next is the standard deviation. It is another measure of dispersion. Standard deviation is the positive square root of average of the deviation of all the observation taken from the mean. Okay, and it is generally denoted by sigma. In statistics, we standard deviation we represent it as sigma, or sometimes we write down SD also. So this is your standard deviation. Variance is simply the square of the standard deviation. This is the variance. And then come coefficient of variation. This is one of the most important and widely used statistic of relative measure of dispersion, that is represented as CV, coefficient of variation. It is simply the ratio between the standard deviation and mean, sigma upon x bar, or standard deviation divided by mean into 100. Coefficient of variation is represented in terms of percentage. Higher CV means the coefficient of variation value is higher. That means less homogeneous. The data is less homogeneous, or the data is much more heterogeneous. And lesser CV, if the CV coefficient of variation is very small, then we say that the data is more consistent, or it is more homogeneous, or more stable, or the variability is much less. In general, less than 20% CV in the field experiment and less than 5% CV is expected for the lab experiment. Because if whenever we try to analyze our data set based on some statistical method or techniques, we desire that the data set should be homogeneous in nature. If the data is homogeneous in nature, the prediction accuracy in all those things will be quite high. We can expect quite high prediction accuracy by our model. But if the data is quite heterogeneous, then probably the model may not perform well in terms of the prediction accuracy. So if our data is more homogeneous, we are in the safer side, and all statistical measures will be in our expected range. Now, these are the measures of dispersion to be summarized, and where they can be used best. Range to quick estimate of spread or small data sets. Interquartile range, it can be used when outliers are present. You want to that just avoid the effect of that outlying observations. As we have already seen that mean median mode, in case of the measure of central tendency also, if you have the outlying observation present in your data set, then mean probably is not the appropriate measure of central tendency. In that case, we need to go for the median, because it is less affected by the outlier observation. So median is nothing but your second quartile. And when you talk about the interquartile range, they are based on the quartile 3 and quartile 1 only. So they are also not much affected by the outlier. So in that case, you better go for the interquartile range to represent the measure of dispersion. Then comes standard deviation, when you want to measure the average deviation from the mean. Variance for statistical modeling or comparison of the spread. Then come coefficient of variation for comparing the variation between two different population, or two different trait, or two different units, or like that, two different samples or so. That means if we have two independent sample or two independent population, and we have the coefficient of variation for each of these two population, then we can understand, or we can compare that which population is more homogeneous or which population is more heterogeneous. Okay, so this way we can compute the different measures of dispersions. Now, once we are done about these measures of central tendency and measures of dispersion, then we need to compute the skewness and kurtosis. It is from the distributional perspective that we know that central tendency measure, that means the whole data set is concentrated to a particular, or the mass of whole data set is concentrated to a particular value, and that is nothing but your measure of central tendency. Once we have computed the measure of central tendency, then with respect to the measure of central tendency, how the other observations are scattered, how the other observations are spread. So that is measures of dispersion. And once we are done with both measure of central tendency and measure of dispersion, then we can compute the skewness and its coefficient of skewness, and the kurtosis and the coefficient of kurtosis. They will tell us about the pickedness from the distributional perspective, and also from the skewness, that is in which particular direction the observations are more skewed, or in which particular direction the observations are less skewed. So this is more of more or less distributional perspective. And how the skewness is computed? Skewness, Karl-Pearson's coefficient of skewness, it is defined as the mean minus mode divided by sigma. So this is the definition of the coefficient of skewness. And from the different distribution, you can compute the skewness also. Now, to represent or to infer about the skewness, if the data is symmetric, that means if the data or the distribution of the data is symmetric, that means with respect to the measure of central tendency, say mean or median or mode, both sides of the data will be symmetric, will be symmetrically distributed. So this is called no skewness. That means if a data set shows that mean and median and mode, all three measures of central tendency coincide, then we can infer that the data set is a symmetric in nature. If it is positively skewed, that means right tail of the data will be long. Positively skewed means right tail of the data will be long. The tail of the data will be longer towards the right. And in that case, you will find that mean will be greater than median, greater than mode. If it is negatively skewed, then the left tail or the tail of the data will be large towards the negative side, left side of the origin. Okay. So this is called negatively skewed, and negatively skewed means your data will represent that the mean will be less than median, will be less than mode. So this is the uh, order of the mean, median, mode for symmetric data, for positively skewed data, and for negatively skewed data. Then come the kurtosis. This is nothing but the pickedness of the curve. If you just plot the distribution of the data set, you will find that pickedness of the data in different magnitude. So if it is a mesokartic, the coefficient of skewness, you can see beta 2, it is mu4 by mu2 square. That mu4 represents the fourth central moment, mu2 represents the second central moment, which is nothing but your variance. So once you compute the fourth central moment of a particular distribution and divide it by the square of the variance, mu2 is the variance, and square it. So this particular ratio will give you the beta 2, which is the coefficient of skewness. Or in other way, we can compute the gamma 2, which is nothing but beta 2 minus 3. So if the range that beta 2 is greater than 3 or gamma 2 is greater than 0, then we say that it is a leptokartic. Its pickedness is quite high. Beta 2, if it is 3 or gamma 2 is 0, then we say it is a mesokartic data. And beta 2 less than 3 or gamma 2 less than 0, then we say this is a platykartic data. Okay, the representation of the curve, in terms of the curve, you can see the red colored distribution is the platykartic in nature, the black colored distribution is mesokartic, and the blue colored one is the leptokartic in nature. So this is the kurtosis or the pickedness. So according to the definition of the statistics, we had few keywords. Starting from the data, we have discussed the data, that is numerical data, then coming to the analysis and then interpretation. Then comes statistical inference. So when you computed the different descriptive statistics or measures of descriptive statistics or summary statistics, then you need to go for the inference of the data. And inference is based on this sample about the population. So ultimately, we need to infer about the population, but based on the sample. We draw a sample from the population by using a sampling procedure, and we analyze the sample and we draw the conclusion about the population. So that is the inference. And for that, we go for the testing of hypothesis and all those things, though it will come in the subsequent days of the training program. But today we'll be discussing only two tests. One is the testing of normality and testing of homogeneity. So normality, either you can have a specified statistical test to check whether your data set, underlying data is normal or not, or we can plot it, say histogram we can plot and overlaying a normal curve over the histogram that will also indicate how close our data is towards the normality. So there are two things in statistics. Sometimes the plot can give you some indication that whether this particular data is approaching towards normality or not, or you can just call for a particular statistical test to test whether the data follows normality or not. So both we can observe today. And second test is the testing of homogeneity. Already in terms of the coefficient of variation, we have already discussed that coefficient of variation is one of the relative measures of dispersion, which can tell us that how uh, homogeneous our data is. If coefficient of variation value is very less, it lies between 0 to 100, or sometimes it may cross 100 also. Because if your sigma, the standard deviation, is greater than mean, so in that case, your coefficient of variations will be greater than 100. But the minimum value would be obviously 0, not less than 0. It cannot be negative because the coefficient of variation is nothing but the ratio between sigma and mean. Sigma is always positive. So, and the minimum value of sigma is 0. So, the minimum value of coefficient of variation would be 0. So, if the coefficient of variation value is close to 0, that means your data is homogeneous. If the coefficient of variation value is quite high, then the data is heterogeneous. Though there is a statistical test, Fisher variance test is used to test the homogeneity of the variance of the data set, or more than one data set, that can also be used to test whether our data is homogeneous or heterogeneous. So as uh, testing of hypothesis is not the discussion topic of today. We'll only show during our analysis that these are the two tests: normality test for testing the normality, and then testing the homogeneity of the data set. Before that, let us just devote, say, very few minutes, 5 minutes or so, for understanding the different plots which we can generate in our SPSS, and which plot can be used for what purpose. Because if a dataset is in your hand, if a dataset comes in your hand, then we can generate different plots. But which plot will be most appropriate to represent the data and to draw a particular conclusion from that dataset? For example, you have a bar graph or bar chart, we say. It is a graphical display of data using bar of the different height. Okay. Sometimes we also say it is a Pareto diagram. It can be horizontal or it can be vertical. Any way you can compute it. Each axis is labeled with either a categorical data or a numerical variable. The height of the bar has an important meaning. That height of the bar will actually have the value, and the bar can be compared to each other. Okay. Now, where to use this bar diagram? For example, I have just given one example that uh, assume that you have surveyed your friends to find which kind of movie they like the most. Okay, so these are the different types of movies: comedy, action, romance, drama, horror. These are the 5 types of the movies, and the number of friends who are liking this particular category of the movie are represented here: 4, 5, 6, 1, 4. So to represent it more properly in terms of the graphical display, you better go for the bar graph, where in the x-axis different categories you can represent, that different categories of the movie or types of the movie, and then the height of the bar will represent the number of friends, okay, liking that particular category of the movie. So this is the proper representative of this kind of situation. Now bar chart is for the bar chart we have understood. Next come histogram. This is just close to bar diagram. But if you just noticed that bar chart, when we prepare, there is a gap between the two bar. There is a gap between the two bar. But if you go for the histogram, this is for basically a continuous type of data, say height of the persons, okay, or scores obtained in a different subject. So these are the continuous data. And for that, there will be no gap in between two bars. So this is a histogram. And histogram, this is a kind of graph that also uses bar. Range of values are listed at the bottom, and these are called the classes. Taller bars represent the classes with the greater frequencies. So this histogram, this is a kind of bar chart, but the categories, instead of categories, the x-axis represents the numbers of the ranges, and the height of this particular bar represents the frequency. Okay, and if you just overlay a normal curve over the histogram, then it will help us in identifying whether the observations or the data sets are following a normality or not. That we can see in the uh, SPSS window also. Then come the pie chart. Pie chart, it is just to show the relative size of the data. Okay, same example you consider that these many friends are you have these many friends, and Out of them, four friends like comedian movie, five friends like action movie, six friends like romance movie, one like drama, and four friends like your horror movie. So if you want to represent it in terms of the percentage, okay, by means of a pie chart. So this pie chart will look like this, and it will represent at that what is the percentage of your friends who are liking the movie of comedy, what is the percentage of the friends who like the movie action, like this. Okay, so this is the representation when you expect or when you want to compute or when you want to display in terms of the percentage. Then you have, sorry, you have pie chart, and then how it is computed. This is the way how you can compute it. So instead of the exact numerical value that four friends like the comedy movie, you represent these in terms of the percentage. The total number of observations you have to compute first, then you divide that total number of observations. So 4 divided by 20 is 20%. That means 20% of your friends like comedy movie, 25% of your friends like action movie, and like this. And you want to represent that in terms of the pie chart. Okay, so this will be computed like this. Then there is a plot called line plot or time series plot. When you have a time series data, for example, the the sales of a particular commodity in a market over the last 10 years or so, sales of a commodity in a market over the last 10 years. If this is the data, this is the kind of data. So you represent this data set in terms of the line plot or the time series plot. So in the x-axis, you must represent your time point or year or whatever time interval you have taken for collecting your data, and y-axis will be the sales. So if your data set is that sales of a commodity in the last 10 years, then your x-axis will be the years, that 10 years from which where you have the data set, for example, say 2000 to 2020, 20 years. And your y-axis will represent the quantity sales or sales in quantity. So this will be your time series graph, or it is a line plot. Next is the box plot, which is one of the most important plot in statistics. It actually five statistical measures. It represents five statistical measures. So, you have a median, you have a quartile 1, quartile 2, and interquartile range. It can represent the outlier. It can help you in determining the outlier and all those. So the look of the box plot will be like this, and you can compute for different categories at one go. If you have, say, different categories of a particular data, you can compute the box plot for all the categories at one go and represent in simultaneous way. So we can see in our uh, practical also. Then comes scatter plot. Initially, we have already talked about it, that if you have two data, two variable x and y, you want to understand the relationship between x and y. What is the relationship between x and y? What is the pattern existing between x and y? Then you can just represent it in terms of the scatter plot. It will give you an indication that whether the x and y, these two variables, are related linearly, or there is a quadratic nature of the relationship exists between these two, or there is exponential relationship exist, or there is other kind of nonlinear relationship or association exists between these two variables. So when you do not know the relationship between the two variables, better to plot it a scatter diagram. You can understand it that whether there is a linear relationship exists or there is a nonlinear relationship exists between these two variables. Accordingly, you have to call for the particular model to be applied on this to go for better accuracy of the better prediction accuracy. Okay. For example, here this is scatter plot with the linear relationship. If your x and y, the observed values are represented here as the small x symbol. You can see this is a scatter plot. So x and y, if the relationship looks like this, then you just draw a simple straight line, and it will be more appropriate to represent the data if you go for the linear relationship. Then this is a kind of quadratic relationship, not exactly the linear straight line, rather sometime maybe y equal to x square or so, quadratic relationship exist. So your data will actually help you in calling for the most appropriate model or suitable model to represent the data, which will ultimately give you the better prediction accuracy. And this will help you in from the statistical modeling point of view. So this is the basic discussion of the descriptive statistics or summary statistics, or the basic statistical techniques which are required to be computed before you go for the advanced statistical method or advanced statistical models to be applied on your data. We'll just go for the practical now. Any data set, if you have on that particular data set, you can just work on. And we can take the data set from the SPSS itself. When if you have installed your SPSS in your system, then you can see that there are lots of sample data present in the SPSS in the particular drive where you have installed your SPSS in the program file. From there also you can just take the data and we can compute the different statistical measures, particularly from the descriptive point of view or summary statistical point of view. We can compute it, and different plots we can just make it. So to start with, if you can see my this SPSS window, this SPSS window, if you can see, you can go to the file. Simply go to the file, click on the open. You have the different options under file. So once you click on the file, you will see that there is a option called open, second option, and under that you can see there is a data called syntax, output, and script. So if you click on the data, this particular pop-up window will appear, and you go to the location. If you have a particular specific data, then that data set you can just import in SPSS to do the analysis. Or if you do not have the data, you just go to the SPSS sample data. How to go to that sample data? So you go to the C drive wherever you have installed your SPSS. Go to the program files. It is IBM software SPSS. Go to SPSS statistics. In my case, it is version 22. Click on that. You have the samples. Click on the samples. You will get these many data set. These many sample data you can observe, and any data you can get. One data, for example, car underscore sales dot sav. So any SPSS data is saved as extension .sav. This is the extension of the SPSS data .sav. So car underscore sales .sav. This is the data set we are trying to analyze. Any data you can just pick up. There are many more sample data available in SPSS. Because why we are choosing this data set? Because this data set contains both qualitative as well as quantitative variables. Because we have already understood that there are two major category of the data. One is a qualitative data, another is a quantitative data. For quantitative data, we can do any kind of we can compute any statistical measures, mean, median, mode, and skewness, kurtosis, and all those things. But in qualitative data, we may not be able to compute all the statistical measures. Okay, so just to differentiate those, we are intending to import one data set which has both qualitative as well as quantitative variables. Car underscore sales, this is one of the data in SPSS where we can observe both qualitative as well as quantitative data. So once you have selected this, just open it. The data set will be open. So this is your data. Now you can see, if you try to understand the data, the first variable, there are many variables. 26 variables are there in this particular data. You can see in this particular data, you have 26 variables altogether. Okay. And the first two variables you can see, they are not quantitative data. So first is manufactured, then is model. These are both qualitative in nature, particularly the nominal scale. Nominal, they are not ordered. They're just name of the manufacturer or name of the model. So they are the nominal data. Then we have some quantitative data. For example, sales, we have resale, then price, engine, horsepower, wheelbase, width, length, all these things. So these are all quantitative data. So this particular data, car underscore sales dot sav, in your SPSS sample dataset represents both qualitative as well as quantitative variables. Now, what we are trying to do is, from this particular data, we will be trying to compute some summary statistical measures from this dataset. And every statistical measures or techniques in SPSS lie on this particular analyze tab. So if you just follow me, follow my cursor, that in this particular SPSS window, you have different in the menu bar, you can see different option. File, first one is the file, where from we have just opened this data set. Then we have edit, view, data, transform, and then analyze, the sixth option. Sixth option in the menu bar is the analyze option, and every statistical technique, whatever is available under SPSS, all are under this analyze tab. So if you just click on the analyze, you will see the list of different options available. And what we are aiming for, we are aiming for computing some descriptive statistics. The beauty of this software is that many of the statistical measures or the options are named after the exact statistical name. For example, you want to compute the descriptive statistics. So the tab name is also descriptive statistics. You can see the second option under analyze. If you just click on the analyze option under the menu bar, you will see the second option is the descriptive statistics. Click on the descriptive statistics, you will see the different options. Frequency, you have descriptive, you have explore, cross tab, ratio, pp plot, qq plot. These many options are available on the under descriptive statistics. Okay. Now, let us first compute the descriptive statistics. By the name itself, you can understand that if we want to compute the descriptive statistics of a particular data set, which may contain many variables, you need to understand that you have to go for these descriptives. Click on these descriptives. This small window will appear. Once you have clicked on these descriptives, this small window will appear. In the left hand side, you can see that all the names of the variables are appearing. The names of the variables. But one thing you can notice that the manufacturer and model, these are the two variables which are nominal in nature. They are not represented by a quantitative value. The manufacturer and model, first two variables in your data set, they are nominal variable and the observations are not in quantitative scale. Okay, so these two variables are not listed here because you want to compute the descriptive statistics, which means mean, median, mode, standard deviation, okay, or range or variation or covariance or all those things. So these are descriptive statistics. And for a qualitative data, particularly for the nominal data, it is not possible to compute all these measures. That's why these two variables have not been listed here. But one variable which is represented differently, you can see vehicle type. It is represented the symbol just left hand side of the vehicle type. It is nothing but your uh, it is nothing but your the symbol of the vehicle type. It represents the nominal scale also or qualitative scale also particularly. But if you go to the vehicle type in the data set, it is represented as type, vehicle type. You can see the observations are either 0 or 1. That means they are represented in terms of the quantitative measurement. Though the actual variable is qualitative in nature, but the observations under this variable is in terms of the quantitative measurement. That's why these variable features here. But the first two variable, manufacturer and model, their observations are in string. They are the names of these particular manufacturer or names of the model. So they are not in the quantitative scale or they are not represented in terms of the quantitative measurement. That's why these two variables do not feature in this particular list. Right? Now, if you just take all, either you can take one by one variable. So select one and click on this particular arrow, select second, click on this particular arrow like this, say sales, 4-year resale value, engine size, what is the price in thousand, what is the wheelbase, okay, what is the width, length, all these things. One by one you can bring, or you can just click on any one of the variable and press Ctrl and A so that all variables can be selected. But do not put this vehicle type because the vehicle type is either 0 or 1. Computing the descriptive statistics for this variable which represents 0 or 1. 0 means something, 1 means something. So this is basically a qualitative variable. Representation is in terms of the quantitative scale. If you compute mean, median and mode, all those things, it will not be you cannot infer anything from these data, right? So better not to use this vehicle type to compute the descriptive statistics. In general, the descriptive statistics will be computed for the scale measured variable or the ratio scale or interval scale. That means the variables which are measured quantitatively. So let us compute these many variables. You can take all except this vehicle type also, or you can take some specific variables to the variables window. Next, let us click on these options. So if you click on the option, you will see that these many statistical measures from the descriptive statistics point of view, you can compute. You can compute the mean, you can compute the sum, standard deviation, minimum value, maximum value, variance, range, standard error of mean. Then you have kurtosis, skewness. Okay, so these many options are available under descriptive statistics. Then the display order, if you have many variables, then in what order the output will be displayed, either as a list of the variable, or it will be in the alphabetic order, or it will be in the ascending order of mean or descending order of mean, that you can select. Variable list means in the way the variables are listed, the order in which the variables are listed, in that particular order, the output will be generated. If you go for alphabetic, then alphabetical name, the variables will be ordered alphabetically and their uh, descriptive statistical measures will be displayed in front of you in the output window. So let us just click on all this range and standard error of mean and skewness and kurtosis and all those things. Okay, then continue. Then nothing else, you just click on this OK. So this will be these many variables we have selected, and the list of the variables is represented in the order as it appears in our data set. Okay, so here you can see the number of observations is given for every variable. And what is the valid n? Valid n is the number of observations which are valid. Some observations are missing, so those missing observations will be discarded. Okay, and you can see what are the different statistical measures it has represented or it has given you. One is the number of observations n. Then we have a range. Range is nothing but the difference between the maximum value and the minimum value. That is your range. The minimum and maximum value is also reported. Then it is the mean and then standard error of mean. Both the things we have opted for and both the things have been reported. For example, the sales in thousands. What is the mean sale and what is the standard error of the mean? Then we have standard deviation. We get square of the standard deviation in terms of the variance. We have skewness and kurtosis. From the skewness and kurtosis also you can represent your data set and infer it. For example, the first sales in thousand, the skewness is 3.4. That means it is positively skewed. 3.4. In fact, all the variables, the skewness is positive. That means toward the right side, the tail is longer. That is the positive skewed. So 3.4, it is highly skewed, highly positively skewed. Okay. Kurtosis also, you can see sales in thousand. The wickedness is quite high, 17 point something. So this is leptokartic. Leptokartic, platykartic, and mesokartic. These are the three categories of the kurtosis. Okay. So this way you can compute the different statistical measure or descriptive statistics. This is one way. Second is again we go to the analysis. Again go to the descriptive statistics. Now instead of going to the descriptive, you can just click on the first one, frequencies also. That can also give you some descriptive statistical measure. So what I'm saying that you click on the analyze, click on the descriptive statistics. After that, you have these many options. First one is the frequencies. Let us click on the frequency. Now here you can see the different nominal variable also. They are also listed here. Though you cannot compute the mean of all those nominal variable, but they are listed here for the purpose. What is the purpose? Let us see. For example, you want the sales in thousands. This is one of the variable. Okay. And go to the statistics. Here you can compute the different quartile. Earlier in the descriptive statistics, when you have opted the other option, the first option, descriptive, we could not see any measure in terms of the quartile. Neither quartile 1, nor quartile 2, nor quartile 3. No options was available and we could not get it. But if you want to have the median or mode or other quartiles, then you have to go to this frequency. So click on the quartile or even percentile also. Percentile means the the data is divided into 100 equal halves. Then in the central tendency, you can see the mean, median, mode, and the sum. All these. Earlier, only mean was available. Okay. So just look at the difference. If your interest is to compute only the mean and standard deviation and variance and skewness and kurtosis, you better go to the descriptive statistics and you compute this. If your interest is also to finding out the median and mode and other quartiles, then you better go to the frequencies instead of descriptive. So you click on the frequencies, you will get the option of central tendency, all the measures, mean, median, mode, and the dispersion also. Here in the dispersion also, all the measures are available. Standard deviation, variance, range, you just check in minimum, maximum, and standard error of mean. So these many dispersions are available, and then skewness and kurtosis. Click on this. Then you can plot it. For example, you want to plot a histogram of a data set. So in a particular place, almost everything is available from the summary statistical point of view. Earlier in the descriptive statistics, only we could generate some statistical measures starting from say sum, mean, standard error of mean, and then standard deviation, variance, skewness, and kurtosis. But here, along with that, we are able to generate the different quartiles or even percentile also. If your interest is on percentiles also, then you can also compute that. Along with that, you can have some frequency curves. Either you can generate a bar chart or pie chart or histogram. Histogram is more important from the distributional perspective. If you generate a histogram and overlay a normal curve over the histogram, you can have a say about what is the status of normality of this particular data without going for a formal test. Okay, so here you can just click on show normal curve on histogram. Then you can click on continue. Okay, statistics we have already seen. And then format, that ascending values and all those things. Compared variables, multiple variable if you want. And then you click on the OK. So here you can see the data set. A particular variable we have only asked for. You can have the multiple variables in your hand and you can take the multiple variables to compute the different measures. What we have asked for this particular variable, same can be asked for the multiple variables at one go. So what we have asked for, we have opted for mean, standard error of mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, skewness. Okay, standard error of skewness, kurtosis, standard error of kurtosis, range, minimum value, maximum value, sum, percentile, all this. His 25th percentile means quartile 1, 50th percentile means quartile 2, that is your second quartile or median. 75th percentile means it is the third quartile. So earlier we did not have the option to compute the median or quartile 1 or quartile 3. Here you have the option for these three quartile. Quartile 1 is 13 point something, quartile 2 that is the median 29.4, and quartile 3 that is 68.18. So these are the measure of central tendency. If you scroll down, you will see these are the frequencies because we have opted for the frequencies. So frequency means a particular value appearing how many times. That is the frequency. A particular value appearing how many times. That is the frequency. Most of the values are appearing once. So that's why the frequencies are 1. Then we have also opted for a histogram and overlaying a normal curve. You can see the cells in 1000. This is the variable we have selected. And for that particular variables, we have generated the histogram and overlaying a normal curve. From this histogram and overlaid normal curve, we can understand that this does not follow normality. This is deviating from the normality. Why? You can see the pickedness is quite high. A particular range of the observations are having higher frequency, very high frequency, and it is skewed towards the positive side. So in one way, the pickedness is quite high. Another way, the the skewness is quite high. So it cannot match with the normality. That means the data does not follow normality from the visual perspective. But if you are not sure from this visual inspection, then you can go for the statistical test also. That's also available. For testing the normality of any data, we have several statistical tests. Starting from the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, even chi-square test can also be used. Anderson-Darling test, von Mises test, Shapiro-Wilk test. These are the many tests available and all are available in SPSS also. So you can opt for any test, particularly Shapiro-Wilk test we opt for to test for the normality of a particular variable. And the null hypothesis for that Shapiro-Wilk test is that data follows normality. If your null hypothesis is rejected, that means we conclude the data does not follow normality. If the null hypothesis is not rejected, then we conclude the data approximately follows normality. So that's the conclusion from the data set once we conduct the test. Okay, so this is from the frequency point of view. Now, same thing we have computed for one variable. Again, you just go to analyze, go to descriptive, click on the frequency. Same window will appear. Instead of one, now let us compute many other variable. For example, say wheelbase, okay, then length, price in thousand. These many variables compute. And let us just opt out the display frequency table because most of the variables are appearing once and their frequency is almost one for every variable, every observation. So why to display those? Unnecessarily, it will just give a lengthy output. Better to check out or just opt out this display frequency table and click on the OK. Whatever we have selected earlier, those statistical measures will be displayed here. You can see these many 4 variables we have selected: sales in thousand, wheelbase, length, and price in thousand. So first and foremost output what we are getting is that number of valid observation. Valid means out of the total data set, few observations are missing for some variables. For example, when we talk about the wheelbase, there is one missing observation. So it is displaying that missing observation, there is a 1. Under length also one observation missing, and price in thousand, 2 observations are missing. Okay, so if there is missing observations and you are computing the mean, so those missing observations will be ignored. They will be deleted. And based on the remaining observations, the mean and other statistical measures would be computed. So here all these statistical measures have been computed starting from your mean, standard of mean, median, mode, and all those things. And then percentile also. Then for every variable, you will get a histogram generated overlaying a normal curve. So first one is sales in thousand. We have already noticed it that it does not follow kind of normality. Then wheelbase, it is almost normal. You can see this wheelbase, this particular variable is almost approaching towards normality because the overlaying normal curve which we have generated and the histogram, they are almost matching. Okay, scroll down, you will see length. Here also it is okay. And then price is thousand. Here pickedness is quite high, may not be normal. Okay, so these are the plot or histogram overlaying a normal curve, which gives you an understanding that whether the underlying observations of the particular variable follows a normality or not. This is under frequency. Now same thing, So we have already seen frequency and descriptive. Then you can go to explore. Here, all the variables will be displayed. The added advantage is that by a categorical variable, factor wise, you can generate the different descriptive statistical measures. For example, we have generated the mean of sales in thousand, a quantitative measured variable, or the mean of the price in thousand, or engine size, or length, or height, or whatever it is. But if we want to generate the descriptive statistics of all these variables based on a particular criteria, say manufacturer. So based on different manufacturer, I want to generate a table where the mean of say sales in thousand will be displayed as per the different manufacturer or as per the different model. So that can be listed as a factor. So for example, I select some quantitative variable, sales in thousand, price is thousand, engine size, say wheelbase. So these are the four variables. I go to the dependent list and say manufacturer and model. These are the two factor I add that based on the different categories of the manufacturer or based on the different categories of the model, I want to generate different statistical measures. Okay. So go to statistics. You have descriptive statistics, confidential and confidence interval of mean 95%. Even you can check on the percentile and all those things to compute. Then plot. You have plot histogram. Better to go for the histogram. Okay. And normality plot with test. So here comes the test. Earlier in the frequency, we can generate the normality plot, but we cannot go for the test. Here, if you go to the explore, then at the same time, you can generate a histogram overlaying a normal curve and also a statistical test to conclude whether the data follows normality or not. Right? Click on continue, then click on OK. So scroll down. Just a minute. Just scroll down. Missing list wise, there is some missing here. Let me just clear this output. Okay. Again, go to, sorry. Yeah. Now it is coming explore. So as because different plots will be generated, so it will take some time. You'll see now the output is generated. Just scroll down, you will see that output. So because we have already opted for percentile means, the data is divided into 100 equal halves, equal part. So here are the different statistical measures, descriptive statistics, and by different manufacturer. So we have opted two qualitative variable. One is the manufacturer and one is the model. So by manufacturer and by model, different measures of central tendency as well as measures of dispersons will be generated for the selected variable. What is the variable? Sales in thousand. Manufacturer say Acura. This is one manufacturer and its mean, median, standard deviation, variance, range, all these have been generated. Next come, just scroll down, second manufacturer, Audi. The variable is remain same, sales in thousand. So for the second manufacturer Audi, what is the mean, what is the median, what is the variance, like that. Scroll down, BMW, the third manufacturer. Okay. Likewise, for different manufacturer, the different statistical measures will be generated and will be displayed in the output. If you scroll down and go down and down, you will see that model. Next is model. Okay. This is the variable. First variable was sales in thousand, then price in thousand. Four variables probably we have taken. So all these four variables will be listed and then comes your model. Next is the test of normality, because we opted for the both histogram as well as test of normality by statistical test. Here by default, two statistical tests have been displayed. One is the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test and another is the Shapiro-Wilk test. For both the tests, the null hypothesis says that the variable follows normality. Data follows normality. This is the null hypothesis. Alternate is data does not follow normality. So here you can see with respect to cells in thousand, when the manufacturer is Acura, both the statistics says that the data follows normality. In some of the manufacturer, the data does not follow normality. For example, you can see this cardiac. Okay, so here you can see p-value is 006 and 010. That means it is rejecting the null hypothesis, means the data does not follow normality. That means the variable cells in thousand under this manufacturer, they does not follow normality. So this is the interpretation, and this is histogram for all the variables by manufacturer and by the model. So at one go, if you want to compute the different statistical measures by different categories of the variable, then you are suggested to go for the explore instead of descriptive or instead of going to frequency. Okay, and histogram and few graphs have already generated. Now one or two graphs I will just quickly show you, that if you want to generate other plot, which is also one of the most important in terms of the visualization, you just go to the graphs in the menu bar. After analyze, you can see direct marketing and then graphs. Click on the graphs, chart builder you can find. So this window will appear. From here, you can see which plot you want to generate. Either you can generate a bar chart, line chart, pie chart, scatter diagram, histogram we have already seen, box plot. Let us see what is the box plot. Okay. So what we have to do, you have to select the box plot and select the particular plot which you want to generate. Just click on that, drag this particular plot in this particular window, and here you can see. So in the box plot, what will happen in the y-axis? If I say it is sales in y-axis, and in the x-axis it must be a categorical variable, right? Maybe say vehicle type. There are two types of vehicle, 0 and 1. So two box plot will be generated. Okay, click on it. So you can see these are the two box plot for the vehicle type. There are two vehicle type. One is automatic vehicle, automobile, another is the truck. Okay, so first automobile, this is the box plot. Box plot is nothing but 5 statistical measured plot. And the observations which are lying here, they are basically outlier. And how to identify these outlier? You can see the observations are, this is a numbered observation. For example, 138 observation or 50th observation. This is not the value of the observation, rather this is the numbered observation, that this is the 50th observations which is doubtful and which may be an outlying observation. Similarly, for the truck category, vehicle type, you can see these many observations are found out to be outlying observations. Okay, so this is box plot. And if you want to make it customize, just double click on this box plot. You will see that this is appearing, and from here you can go to different options. For example, options is there. You can go to transpose the chart. This is a vertical box plot. You can make it horizontal, just get it transposed. Okay, and you want to give some footnote, okay, title and anything. So this you can go to the option and make it. Likewise, you can change the box plot. For example, I just make it horizontal, so it will be transposed. Earlier it was in the vertical visualization, now it is in the horizontal scale. So this way you can generate box plot. Similarly, if you go to the graphs again, go to the chart builder, other plot, any plot. Say for example, bar chart. So just click on this bar, drag it toward this particular window, and any particular quantitative scale, say price in thousand, I bring it in the Y scale and in the vehicle type, or I can say it is a model. As per different model, I want to generate the bar chart. Okay. So mean of the price in thousand per different by different categories of the model. So I generate it, click on it, and you see that this is a bar chart. So these are the different models available under this particular data set, and mean price in 1000 for different models. And this is made in terms of this bar chart. Okay. Similarly, pie chart and all those things. So whatever chart you are intending to display or intending to create, that particular chart, you just click on it, click that particular chart, drag it in this particular window, and then you see which particular variable you want to represent. For example, sales in 1000 you want to represent here, and say category, vehicle type. Okay. So there are two categories only, and they will be represented. Click on here. So this is your pie chart. There are two category of the vehicle. You consider, you if you have brought it here model, then there are several categories of the model. So as per the pie chart will be generated. If you double click on this, then you can customize it. Okay. So if you double click in here, and if you say, for example, go to option, then there are hide legend and all those things you can have. Then elements, explore, show data level. If I see the data level, then that percentage or particular data is represented here. This is in percent, definitely. So 39% is of truck and 60% is of the automobile. Okay, so this way you can customize your pie chart and all those things. As much as you explore, as much as you practice for this different generating different plots and other things in SPSS, uh, you will be more comfortable in doing your analysis and interpreting it. So I think in short, this is the today's session. And if you have any specific questions, you are welcome to ask. Though the topic is very trivial, everybody knows it, you all know, but probably few of the things which you could get a glimpse of it, that what is the way out to go ahead with the step-by-step analysis. First, you visualize the data, try to extract the pattern existed in the data set, and go for the particular model when you go for the advancement in analysis. And for simultaneous display of different statistical measures, which measure, which particular option you need to go for. Under descriptive, you have descriptive statistics, you have explore, you have frequencies, and many things. Okay. So if you want to generate histogram along with the testing of hypothesis and all those things, then you can go for that. And then homogeneity also, there is a test. So if you just go to the analyze, for that case, you need to go to the compare means. Okay. And then you go to one-way ANOVA. So this is for your, that homogeneity kind of thing. Okay, vehicle type, you just put it in factor, and then in option you can go for this all these descriptive statistics and this homogeneity of the variance test. So here you can just click on it and you will get it. So because this was also one of the tests for testing the homogeneity. So this is available under analyze, go to the compare means, and go to one-way ANOVA. So if you go to the one-way ANOVA, select a particular variable which is scale measured, and if you want it to be displayed per category, so you just get a categorical variable by means of introducing a qualitative variable, and then you check for the homogeneity test, you will get the homogeneity test result. Okay, this is for the homogeneity test of homogeneity of the variance. So here you can see this is significance. That means here the null hypothesis is that the variances are equal. Alternate is variances are not equal. Okay. So that means it's heterogeneous. So yeah, I think we are done with this today's session. And if you have any questions, let me just see the chat box. If anyone, please provide the recording. Any quick questions if you have, anyone of you, those who have done the analysis with me? Someone has questioned if the data with some missing value of variable analysis will be affected or not. As far as descriptive statistics is concerned, the missing observations will be deleted and will be ignored. And that is why the valid observations is reported. Total number of observation and then valid observation. So missing observations will be just ignored. And with the remaining valid observations, all the statistical measures will be computed. For ordinal data, someone has asked, is median is possible? Median is possible in case of ordinal data also, but better not to compute because ordinal data is represented in terms of the quantitative scale 1, 2, 3 like that. For example, you are looking for the income of the farmers, maybe lower income group, middle income group, and high income group. They may be represented in terms of the 1, 2, 3 like this. Okay, so you can easily compute the median. But yeah, of course, for the central tendency measures, instead of mean, this particular data will be better suited for the median. Yes, someone has asked, put variable data in SPSS before computing. So before you analyze the data set, you first bring the data set in your SPSS, variable view and data view. These are the two view in the SPSS. Go to the variable view to understand that which variable is representing or measured in what scale. Because there you can represent if a variable is measured in nominal scale or ordinal scale, accordingly you can just denote that. I think these questions of Likert data and pain score is an ordinal data, so median has to be used. Yes, median obviously no mean, no mean. Mean you cannot use. SPSS and design expert. I am not aware of the design expert software, so I cannot comment in it. SPSS is more easy to handle, I hope. How will you export the data from Excel? Export or import you are talking about? Probably you are talking about import. If you have saved the dataset in Excel, you just go to the file and data and you go to the desired location. You can import, definitely you can import the Excel sheet. So you just open your SPSS, go to the file, click on the data, a new window will appear. You go to the desired location or drive where you have saved your dataset in Excel format and just click on the drop down menu and you will see that there is option called Excel or XLSX or XLS. So you select that, all Excel file will be displayed and you choose the one which you want to import. Yes, degree of loneliness, median is suitable, not the mean. Yes. Value of kurtosis and skewness. Skewness, I have already told you that if it is greater than 0, skewness, that means it's positively skewed. That means the tail is longer in the right direction. If it is negative, that means the tail is longer in the negative direction, that is negatively skewed. Similarly, kurtosis, if it is greater than 0, then it is leptokurtic, equals to 0 mesokurtic, and less than 0, it is platykurtic. Kurtosis actually signifies the pickedness. If you just draw the distribution of the curve, so you will see the pickedness. One is the scatteredness, which is in both tail, pickedness, which is the height. What is the height in the data? If it is huge, height is quite high, then it is, pickedness is very high. That is called leptokurtic. Medium height or mesokurtic, and lesser height, this is platykurtic. Simple. Only the pickedness means the height, the spread, vertical spread of the data. One is the horizontal spread, which is in both tail, that is skewness. Vertical spread, this is kurtosis. SPSS is paid version, but you can definitely get the trial version. Go to the IBM website and you can download the trial version of SPSS latest. Any other question? Sample data someone has asked for. Let me just show you. Again, let me just share the slide. Share my screen. Now, if you can see my screen, you just see, you go to the file, click on the file, click on the open, then data. Okay, file, open, then click on the data. Now this is by default, my SPSS location is already, we have already imported the data. So same location has been opened. But in your system, you just go to the C drive, because the program file generally remains under C drive. So you go to the C drive, SPSS or whatever software you have installed that remains in the program file. So you click on the program file. SPSS is under IBM. So click on IBM, then SPSS, then statistics, then the version of the SPSS. In my system, it is 22. Then you can have samples. So if you click on the samples, then English, and these are the sample data in SPSS available. These many data sets are available. So you can choose any one. I have chosen intentionally on the car underscore sales because it contains both qualitative as well as quantitative variable. That's it. Hope you understood. So yeah, I think we are done, and probably there is no more question.
So thank you so much, sir, for a very useful session, and participants have really enjoyed your session. And dear participant, we will definitely share the recording of every session. Okay, so you can watch it later and you can make the practice. So thank you so much, sir, on behalf of all the participants and my own behalf. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
to all the participants.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.